Hey, the Mad Hermit here, and welcome to the Mad Hermit's Guide to Combat and Deck Building in Shroud of the Avatar Pre-Alpha Release 8. Now, although combat has been around for a few releases already, this is the first time that the card base system has been shown to the public. Now, this is a first pass at that system, and despite being a first early pass, it's still a lot of fun and has tons of potential. And I think once you understand how the card system works, you'll not only understand why the developers went this route, but you'll be happy that they did. Before I show you how a deck is built, I want you to see some combat in action so that you can better visualize what's going on here. If you look at the bottom combat bar, you'll notice that various skills that I have chosen are appearing and disappearing on a regular basis. I'm also selecting skills to execute them, which also causes them to disappear once used. Now, although the skills dealt in are displayed in what seems to be a random fashion, you can control the composition of your deck and therefore the frequency in which certain skills appear. You can also control the number of slots, currently I have 7, the speed at which cards are dealt, as well as the speed in which cards disappear from your hand. All that is done and decided by you beforehand when you build your deck. As you can see, I was engaged in a nasty 2-on-1 situation, and so I chose to run away, which is actually a really good strategy. If you get out of combat mode, you charge your health and your focus faster. That's the red and blue line at the top left of the screen under my name. And I'm also able to see my opponent's health and focus. And if they're still in combat, they will only recharge focus, and most likely at a slower rate, depending on if they're using skills or not. And so I use that strategically to get away, recover, and close the deal. Also keep in mind that there are bonuses for attacking people from behind. Alright, let's go build a deck. Hitting the K key brings up your skill tree, and that's divided into adventuring and crafting. And right now, crafting really isn't implemented, so don't worry about that. Switch to the adventuring tab, and notice that you have 80 points to distribute among combat skills and magic skills, each skill having its own tree. The developers have chosen to go deep rather than wide in their skill development, so therefore certain trees will be leaner than others. Blades has a nice deep tree, fire also, but some of them not so much, so keep that in mind when assigning your skills. Before you can build a deck, you have to select skills that your character's proficient in. Selecting a skill adds that ability to your repertoire. The more you select it, the more cards you'll have available for any decks you build. You'll see how that's relevant when we build a deck, which we'll do later. You'll also note that hovering over a glyph reveals information about it, its description, its cost, any prerequisites, as well as how many cards of this type you have available to you. Left-clicking adds more cards of that type to your inventory. Right-clicking removes them. As you can see, I've bumped up the root spell to level 4, which means that I can put up to 4 root spells in any and all of the decks I decide to build. I'm going to quickly add the rest of the skills that I want so that we can get right to deck building. I'm going to add some fire spells, some innate abilities that increase the damage and range, some more health, and I'm going to leave 18 points on the table for later because I want you to see what a deck looks like if you don't put any skill points into the focus skill. Now, before you can begin combat, you have to create a deck. The Y key brings up the decks screen, and here you can see the new deck building system. So let's go through each section so we can demystify it and understand it and build some proper decks. On the left side of the screen here is where you're going to place your cards. Your cards are the skills that we just selected. The order in which you place these skills is not important because they are drawn randomly. What is important is the composition. When we talk about cards, think of a deck of playing cards, and the composition being how many kings, how many aces, how many twos you have in that deck. The minimum deck size is 20. So if you don't put at least 20 cards in your deck, you're going to be dealt something called slugs. And slugs are useless cards that essentially clog up your deck. As you can see, I currently have no cards in my deck, so the computer's automatically given me 20 slugs, making my deck extremely sluggish. I also have a maximum hand size of 4, my draw speed is very slow, and my discard speed is the fastest. Let's go over what these parameters mean. The hand size, in my case, is 4, which means that's the maximum number of cards that I'll be able to have displayed at any one time. The draw speed is how fast those cards will be dealt. Finally, the discard speed controls how long the card will stay in my hand before disappearing. Now, currently I can't change the values of any of those parameters, and that's because I didn't devote any skill points to focus. That's why I left 18 points behind, because we're going to go back and we're going to add some skill points to focus to see how that changes the way the deck plays. But first, let's build a deck. Hit the L key to bring up your skill list. From here we can see all the skills we put points into, as well as the number of cards used in this deck. As you can see, Fireball has 0 cards used in this deck and 5 available. To add a skill to your deck, simply drag it from your skill list to your deck list. Since I previously devoted enough skill points into Fireball to achieve a level 5 rank, I can drag 5 Fireball cards into my deck. If I keep my deck at a size of 20, that means that I'll have a 25% chance of drawing a Fireball card during combat. Although your deck can be of an unlimited size, I'm going to continue to add skills to my deck to remove all the slugs. I'm going to hit that 20 card minimum and make my deck a lean, mean fighting machine, because nothing's worse than needing a Fireball or a heal spell and drawing a slug. Also keep in mind that you can get slugs added to your deck by wearing armor. So even if I remove every slug from my deck right now, having armor increases or adds slugs to your deck. Okay, I've added the minimum of 20 cards, and now one thing I'm going to do before accepting this is I'm going to say use current equipment, and what that does is it adds what I'm currently wearing to this deck. And that's important because sometimes you have sword-based skills, and if you happen to switch and pick up a mace or something like that, then when those cards are dealt, you are going to have cards that you really can't use. They won't be slugs, but they'll be unusable, so they'll be just like a slug. And so by using your current equipment, it means that when you switch to this deck, it'll automatically switch out your armor and weapons, saving you from the hassle of micromanagement. Note that if you switch your deck while in combat, you incur a 50% focus penalty. Alright, let's get back to our deck, accept the changes, and most importantly, let's equip it. If we don't equip this deck, we won't be using it when we go into combat. Now that it's equipped, we're ready to give it a whirl. Hit the Z key to enter combat mode and watch the cards being dealt. As you can see, they're randomly being drawn, and I have 4 slots available. So you can see that they are filling the slots and then they are fading after a period of time. And this is your default standard rate and layout. Because there's no target selected, clicking on a glyph does nothing, but you get the idea. Alright, let's go back and modify the deck and make it a little bit more interesting. K brings up my skill selector, Y my deck manager. We're going to modify the deck, and just as a refresher, see I can't change the hand size, the draw speed, or the discard speed. That's the only setting I have right now. So I'm going to go to my focus tree, and I'm going to start allocating some of those 18 points here. The first skill on the focus tree is the higher consciousness skill. It is an innate ability, which means I don't have to add a card to my deck. I just have this ability. I'm going to increase it to 5, and what it does is it allows me to increase my hand size. So 4 plus 5. So I can go up to 9 now. Let's see what that looks like. As you can see now, I have 9 slots where cards can be drawn and placed into. But one thing you'll also notice is that I'm not going to be able to fill them all up because my discard speed is too fast. And I need to slow that down so cards stick around long enough to fill the extra spots. So we're going to fix that next. Okay, I have 8 skill points remaining, and the next skill on the focus tree is concentration, which allows me to increase the amount of time that glyphs stay in my hand. So I'm going to crank this up a bit. And as you can see, once I do that, my discard speed has additional options and I can slow it down. So I'm going to slow it down as much as possible, and let's take a look at what that does when you add skill points to that. At this point, it should start filling up the majority of that bar below. And we'll see if that's true. Because now glyphs are not fading as fast. They're sticking around for the fight. Now I wasn't able to max it out, so I didn't get the slowest speed possible, and that's why it's not able to hit that 9th slot. And there you go, there's a slug, a useless card, and if I was to hover my mouse over that, it would tell me why I got that slug, and it would tell me it's because I have chainmail gloves on. Not good for casting. Alright, let's go ahead and make one final change, and I'm going to manipulate the mental reflex and put some skill points in there, which allows me to adjust the draw speed, and I'm going to go from very slow, which we saw before, to very fast. And my discard speed before was slow, but I don't have enough skill points to slow it down further. So my discard speed is going to be set to medium here, but the thing to look out for is how fast these cards are dealt. So if you want to be fast at the gate, that is, have cards dealt to you really quick as soon as you enter combat, you're going to want to put skill points into mental reflex and then increase the draw speed to very fast. If you need to target a spell on yourself, perhaps a heal, hold down the Alt key while left-clicking on the glyph. Okay, so you made your deck and you want to get your PvP on. Here are the open PvP locations where you can try out your decks. In Owl's Head, outside the city walls near the Noble District, to the right side, you'll find these friendly people. Also in the Noble District, in the weapon shop, you'll find a PvP area. The ferry to the Brave Coast in Kingsport will take you to a PvP island. The Southeast Guard Tower in Kingsport also has an open PvP area. You can also find one in Lady Bridget's house in Braemar. And finally, there are 2 forest road scenes that also have open PvP areas. Anyway, this concludes the Mad Hermit's Guide to Combat and Deck Building. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you have questions or comments, leave them below, and I'll see you online.